All right, on today's episode of the NBA Draft Junkies podcast, we're going under the microscope. This time I have a special guest. I got my guy, Jacob Myers, with me. We'll be talking about Christian Anderson, here's Acuff, Darren Peterson, Keaton Wagler, so many more guys. Stay tuned. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, listening, watching, however you consume this audio. Again, I am James Barlowe. If it's your first time watching, first time listening, you can find me on Big Board. I have all that information at the end of this episode. But let me tell you about my guest. Well, let him introduce himself. I got Jacob Myers with me. Jacob, tell the audience who is not familiar with what you do. Who are you? Where can they find you? What do you do?
First off, James, appreciate you having me on the show. You guys do an awesome job. Been a big fan. I think you guys move the game forward, especially within the draft space. Utmost respect there. But yeah, Jacob Myers, founder of LeagueHim. We've built LeagueHim over the past 5.5, going on 6 years. Started kind of developing, a media platform to track, more under the radar talent at the collegiate level. And now, heading into our 6th season, now we're kind of focused on the draft and identifying and tracking players. From prospect to professional, all over the place. So, this weekend, me and you were going back via text. I'm trying to catch up on film. I went to a college game live. I got to cover a high school tournament. So, I watch a lot of basketball and I travel a lot to, watch all the best prospects. And I'm excited to talk today.
Cool. Yeah, I met Jacob. Was that the Combine? Yeah, we met at the Combine in Chicago. I was sitting down doing some work. He came up to me, talked, found out we've been following each other. So, definitely wanted to get him on the show and get his thoughts. Jacob's in the gym, so he's definitely somebody that you want to follow, listen to, keep up with. So let's get right into today's podcast. We're going to start off with the first game on that Saturday slate. It was Arkansas versus Texas Tech. Two point guards who I think are first round picks got to match up against each other. Darius Acuff, freshman from Arkansas, versus Christian Anderson, a sophomore from Texas Tech. In that game, Darius Acuff finished with 20 points, 4 rebounds, and 8 assists. On the season, he's averaging 17 points, 3 rebounds, and 6 assists while shooting 42% from 3. Currently, I have him 17th on my Volume 2 big board that I probably drop January 1st. So I'm in between. I try to give guys, some games in between before I start moving stuff around. What are your overall thoughts on Darius Acuff, Jacob?
I think it starts with, understanding who he was throughout the process of his development. So this is like an alpha, right? Like lead guard, point guard, really tough, competitive. He's got good frame, gets downhill with ease, very assertive, and, carries himself with a real swagger. I think that kind of is the epitome of what he is. And then over the past couple of years, he's gotten way more evolved as, a shooter off the catch. On pull-ups, it started, he kind of gotten a little bit better on, hunting the mid-range. Now, I think he's shooting, 42% from 3 on the year. He's been super efficient on and off the ball, on and off the catch and off the dribble. He's a point guard, right? Tough, assertive downhill, forceful driver, smooth pace. He continues to evolve and kind of, direct traffic for, Arkansas team is making some waves early in the season.
Yeah, he's somebody that I've had to constantly move up, going into this, his freshman year. I thought he pounded the ball a lot at IMG. I thought he pounded the ball a lot on the AAU level, and he's gotten completely just better as far as like running an offense. I think he has an identity so far as like who he is, when to score, when to create, when to, put the ball on the ground for himself. And I think that that's helped his draft stock, at least in my opinion. I did mention I do have him at 17th. I did drop a point guard like power ranking, and I had him and Christian Anderson and like Bennett Sturts were like neck and neck. But I feel like Acuff and Christian Anderson are taking a step ahead of Bennett Sturts. I'll drop another point guard ranking soon. But I've been very impressed with Darius Acuff. I do still think that he is maybe a step behind as far as just long term what I think he will become when you compare him to like Kingston Flemings, and if you compare him to Michael Brown. Michael Brown is struggling shooting the ball from 3, But and then also like I still think that Neoklus Avdalis is a point forward at the next level because he is 6'9", he can pass the ball. But Acuff has been very, very impressive, and he's just somebody that I come in with, I guess you could say preconceived notions of guys, and I always want to like make sure that I'm not trying to keep a bias if I have a bias, and I just want to make sure that like every time I watch him, like man, it's hard to deny that he's definitely getting better as a point guard. What I do think that is going to probably like separate him to maybe cracking that top or maybe becoming a lottery pick. I have him only at 44% at the rim in the half court, and that's just something I think that he has struggled with just finishing. I think he's a good athlete, but he's going to be ultimately a below the rim finisher. And there's ways to, pick and choose, I guess, to clean up your efficiency. He does shoot floaters, which is good, but I think that that's something that is, I guess, was maybe holding him back for me from being like a lottery pick. But overall, I think he plays well. Again, like all those things that you mentioned, strong frame, very good shooter. And then, like I said, the most impressive thing for me when I watch him is just how he has grown as a playmaker. But matched up against another who I think first round pick, Christian Anderson, sophomore from Texas Tech. In that same game, Christian Anderson had 26 points, 4 rebounds, and 11 assists. On the season, Christian Anderson is averaging 20 points, 3 rebounds, and 8 assists. He's shooting 43% from 3 on a heavy volume. I have him at 22nd on my board. Again, not necessarily a knock on him. It's just this is a really strong class. I got to see Christian Anderson in person at Basketball Without Borders. It's going to be 2 years ago, and he was good, but like his control of the offense is just really, really good. But before I get into my spiel, Jacob, what are your thoughts on Christian Anderson as a point guard?
Fluid, late bloomer, dynamic pull-up shooter, very gifted pick and roll operator for his age. We saw, he got pulled up on the Germany national team for his maturity, his ability to kind of handle that role over this summer. He showed it in flashes last year as a freshman. This year has made a real jump. Their entire offense is built around him and JT Toppin, that kind of two-man game. And his usage has been, it's probably up there with anybody in the country in college basketball. He's a legit engine for them, and they've played a really tough schedule early in the season. So we've got to learn a lot about him. It's interesting how we've grouped up the players with the matchups from this weekend. There are a lot of point guards that are very talented in college basketball right now, consider draft prospects, maybe potential first-round picks. I think it's just going to be interesting to see how it goes out, and I'm maybe a little bit more patient with my evals on point guards now with the climate where, how many guys are really needed in the NBA level. We talk about like a scarcity level. So, like, it's really difficult. Like, the bar set to be a point guard in the NBA is so high. So the things I look at, a guy like Acuff, a guy like Anderson, both really good with the ball. I want to see, how dynamic are they off the ball with their gravity as a shooter? Do they impact winning without it? Are they like good at spacing? Like we see Darren Peterson come back against Missouri and against NC State, and he immediately is within the rhythm of their offense. He's so good off the ball. He knows exactly where to be. He cuts through. He slides through. Like he offensive rebounds. He defensive rotations. All that little stuff is the stuff I probably pay the most attention to for these guards because it's just so difficult to take the ball out of a Cade Cunningham's hands or a Jason Tatum or a Shea or a Jalen Williams or even to a lesser degree some of these other playmakers, a Denny Avia. So like you're taking the ball out of someone else's hands when you're a point guard at the NBA levels. Anderson, I think what's really helped him and what's been probably most encouraging for his prospects as a draft prospect this year for me has been, some of the driving. I think he had like 2 really forceful, like he had a step through to close the first half, like a jump stop through traffic, nice gather finish. He's playing a little bit more physicality on his pick and roll setups. And then defensively, the team has struggled and, he's really being challenged by coach. I think that's the thing I'm really looking at. I want to see where he is defensively and where he is, obviously maintaining a certain efficiency to have the ball in his hands. But it really comes down to like who he is. Deep pull-up shooter, awesome in the pick and roll, like pure point guard, can really run an offense. I'm just, being a little bit more investigative with the other stuff for both of them because the bar is so high to be a point guard in the NBA. And then in this class, you listed some of them, but 5 point guards won't go in the lottery, right? honestly, it'd be difficult to see 5 or 6 point guards go in the first round. And then you break it. I'm kind of going on a rant here, but if you kind of break it down, it's like, well, if you're not going to be a lottery or a top 20 pick and you're making 7 figures in college and you're like, we're talking about some of these dudes get to really get awesome reps of like whole scouting reports on them, the teams built around them. So that's that's how I approach like scouting the point guards in this early in the cycle. I'm just trying to get a real feel for like all the other stuff that's like not their direct identity. Because I think it's really tricky for guards early, unless you're like a Fears where you get like a top 10 pick and you immediately get this like investment in usage and like they let you rock. I think it can be really, really difficult for guys to stay on the floor and get those reps at the NBA level to become better unless you're really good defensively and do some of the like extra stuff, have some intangibles, have some toughness outside of just like the fun stuff like pick and roll and shooting and pull-ups and floaters and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's this draft and just really like the overall landscape of the point guard position. Like there aren't jobs for point guards. You know what I'm saying? Like Fears, you talked about like that situation opened up because that was like one of the few spots where their team needed a point guard. Brooklyn drafted 3 of them. You know, so it's like it's hard. Those jobs don't open up. The NBA is still young in a sense where like you know what I'm saying like. Guys are guys are young, but at the same time, like it's just hard to get like James Harden's 36, and when is he's going to play as long as he wants to play. So it's like in the situation of evaluating like Christian Anderson and Acuff, what I do like about them is that they're going to be able to knock down shots. They don't have to be forced into high usage roles when it is their time in the NBA versus like Fears ended up being in a great spot because they just let him go do what he needs to do. Mm-hmm. He's learning on the fly. Team's not good. It's, I mean, almost like the best, situation for a young point guard to have. But like, just like you mentioned, there's just a lot of point guards in this draft. There's not a lot of starting point guard jobs. So I agree with you as far as like evaluating guys and taking your time. But ultimately, like it may come down to where you're drafted. Like I still have stock in Rob Dillingham, but there was he was drafted by a team with win now aspirations, and he still needed time to develop physically and fit in alongside like an Anthony Edwards. But then when you're not playing, you lose your confidence. When you lose your confidence, shots are not falling, and now you're trying to figure it out. And then his cohort at Kentucky, like. We don't know how much Reed Sheppard will be playing right now if Fred VanVleet doesn't get hurt. So, like, a lot of the point guard position at the NBA level is just where you're drafted at, and then also can you fit into a role when you are there and then waste your time. Last thing about these set of guys, like, we're recording this on Monday night, like Peyton Pritchard. Look how long he had to wait to get an opportunity. And they believed in him, they paid him, but, like, he had to wait a long time, and now he's finally a starting point guard on the team. So, it's really, really tough. And I think those two guys, whether or not, I mean, the money is hard to turn down that money going back to school. But whether or not they're late lottery picks or top 25, I don't know what another year of college does for them outside of next year not being as strong of a draft. But that's something that they'll have to evaluate at the end of the year. Moving on, you mentioned Darren Peterson. 17 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists against NC State. I believe he played 31 minutes. He shot 7 of 14 from the field. Jacob, you mentioned him as somebody you are evaluating, and it sounded like you are putting him in the point guard frame. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I envision Darren. I think his development throughout his senior year on the ball prolific. I think it changed the picture of what he could be long term. I envision him as an engine. Someone that can initiate, score prolifically at all 3 levels with a certain precision. Mm-hmm. And then I think his ability to process, pass, change pace, change gears, has the ball on a string. I think he's best accustomed to being an engine. So it's funny, like I'm gonna continue this with all these different guards. Like it is so difficult to have the ball in the NBA. Like I think that's what people need to realize because like Darren Peterson does everything. Everything. Like, what does he not do?
Right.
Besides play every game this year.
I mean, playing 32 minutes. He does.
Yeah. But kind of breaking down his game, I thought he's been awesome. Like, in the limited, obviously, Self, the mixed breakdown of the situation with his health is clear. He might not be at 100%. And you maybe could see that with, I don't know if we've saw like that pop yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like some of that, like maybe come off a ball screen, like change levels at the elbow and like explode to the rim. Stuff like that we haven't really seen yet if we're critiquing him.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I see him as an engine, man. And then defensively, he's a real competitor as well. We've seen him play pretty well on the point of attack. I thought he's been great as a helper. He had a couple of deflections against NC State in limited minutes.
Yeah, I think early on, and I think he is more advanced than like Anthony Edwards at the same age, which you can see Anthony Edwards has grown into being the engine. I mean, he's going to have the ball in pick and roll, obviously. Like all your shooting guards, for the most part in the NBA, are going to get plenty of on-ball reps. This isn't the Michael Jordan era or the Reggie Miller. You run off a floppy for 23 seconds and then get a shot. I still have Darren as a combo too, but I do think 3 years he will be the guy on just like him and put somebody next to him to complement him because he is that dynamic. I do agree. I don't necessarily think he's 100%. I do think he tried to show. I think he tested his hamstring athletically a little bit against NC State. He had a play where in the second half, I don't know if it was off a loose ball, but he did from the right wing. He attacked. He missed the layup, but you could kind of tell he had some spring. And then he had another play in the second half where he drove baseline and he missed the layup again. But I think he pushed his hamstring more in that game against NC State than he had in the past. But ultimately, like, I don't know what I'm not a doctor. I don't know what the issues are with his hamstring. I hope he's able to be 100% this season, but I also understand if he just says, you know what, I'm good. But he just comes off as like the ultimate competitor to me, and he's going to try. If he's at 75%, he can play 30 minutes, and it's not something that's going to like set him back long term. I see him continuing trying to play. Hopefully, if nothing else, he plays against BYU at the end of January because that's going to be box office. But I still see him as a 2, but I do think eventually he will end up playing like point guard, especially when it's second contract. He's somebody that you build around. He's still number 1 on my board. I mean, it's really hard to look at AJ. It's really hard to look at Cameron Boozer and say that somebody's better than him. But that's just what this kind of draft is, where you got a whole lot of talent at the top. What are your thoughts on AJ possibly sitting, or what would you do, Jacob, if you were AJ's right-hand man, or not AJ, I'm sorry, Darren Peterson's right-hand man, and he's telling you that his hamstring at best is 75%. I'm kind of putting you on the spot. No notes.
Yeah, I don't have an answer for that one. I hate to speculate on injuries. I feel like everyone puts the doctor hat on or whatever, and they try to act like, you know, I thought it was honestly a little bit funky that some of the, like, I'll be honest, some of like the beat reporters for Kansas I thought were a little bit too critical, maybe saying things about like his competitive DNA and stuff like that. So I don't know. It's tricky. I think to your previous part, you're talking about some of the explosiveness he has shown. I mean, the play that really comes to mind to me where like he showed some real pop this season was against North Carolina early. He like picked Caleb Wilson and had like a quick 2-hand.
Yeah.
And you kind of saw how like smooth and how he's able to like glide and, you know, use his length. But yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky situation. They ask Bill Self about it every day, and it gets more complicated.
Yeah,
I don't envy his position. I don't envy anybody's position. I just hope he's healthy.
I hope he's healthy too. I got to see him in person a couple years ago. I think his last year on the AU level, and like he had nothing to prove. And I saw him guard as a kid. He's a grown man, but Savo Drezic, like he came off the bench for, I believe it was Austin Rivers Elite. And Savo came in, I think the first game, like nobody knew who he was, and he just controlled the game, destroyed everybody. And then like they played Darren Peterson, and then Savo came off the bench again. Savo was doing his thing. Savo was really, really good in pick and roll. He's at Basketball Without Borders. He's legit. I don't know why he left school to go play overseas, went back home. I get it. That's fine. I still think he has high-level talent, but like Darren Peterson, I think he saw Savo carved him up like 3 plays in a row, and he just went to his coach and said, I got him. And then he guarded him full court. And it's like a kid that's number 1, number 2 in his class, guarding full court. And this isn't like live period. This is April, you know? So I think for the fact that he's even going out there at 75%, that just lets you know how much he cares, how competitive that he is.
Yeah, I mean, I've scouted him extensively throughout high school, seen him play against pros, college players. I mean, he dominated. I was at Fuma Zero Elite Camp, which is Damian Lillard's select camp. This is 2 years ago, so he's still in high school. There was a big mix of, like, you know, college players. He dominated them. He was the best player in the gym, and it wasn't even like it was like it was a state, like it wasn't even a question. But yeah, I think his demeanor has always been very impressive. I thought it was one of the big separators for him coming into the draft cycle was his competitive DNA, demeanor, maturity. So yeah, I don't exactly agree with some of those questions. I just hope he's healthy, and we see him out there. Like you said, for the draft sickos, definitely want to see against BYU. Like, come on now.
I'm waiting to buy my plane ticket, man. Kind of, you know. I mean, yeah, hopefully the young man is healthy, but selfishly I want to see him, but I want to see him, you know, this time next year more than anything else. And
for sure.
You know, because I still have him at number one. Again, I think he's just that good, but unfortunately, like I don't want to call anybody a casual fan, but we just haven't had the opportunity to see him. And, you know, we see AJ get loose against Cal Riverside. Like we don't get to see that from him, but you know, I think that his camp, we're going to handle the situation and do what's best for the young man. And ultimately, like, you know, you've seen him for a few years. These GMs have seen him for years. Like, they know what kind of player that they're going to get. And I don't necessarily think that even if he were to shut it down, I don't think that's going to affect his draft stock unless the hamstring is just it was like a red flag injury. That's the only thing that I can see. But as far as like a skill standpoint, talent standpoint, competitive standpoint, he checks all those boxes that you want to see. So we just talked about Darren Peterson, who, you know, has been around. People know who he is. But what about Keaton Wagler from Illinois? Keaton Wagler against Nebraska, he finished with 19 points and 10 assists. 15, 5, and 3 on the season. He's shooting 39% from 3. I don't know how Illinois does this, but they seem to find their guys. Again, I'm putting my board together because I kind of have to, but I've struggled with putting him on for 2026 draft versus 2027. I know he had the really good game against Nebraska. I believe he was good the prior game, but it's been like a mixed bag for him against Power 4 schools. What are your thoughts on Keaton Wagler?
He's been the most interesting player in the country for me, dating back to probably September, October. Illinois had a feeling this summer that, you know, they had one with his impact in summer workouts, and then scouts, when they started going to practice preseason, he generated a little bit of a buzz behind closed doors. But like you said, there was a certain hesitancy just because he hasn't had like the high stakes evals that a lot of these kids have had time after time again throughout grassroots. Guys like Darren and AJ went all these camps. They played on circuits that were NBA certified. There's, you know, 400 plus possessions of them on Synergy. Keaton Wagler, that's not the case. So, you know, he was the Gatorade Player of the Year at Kansas, 2-time state champion. I think he's super intriguing. I personally do think if he wants to, I think he'll be a one and done first round pick. And I think he potentially could really climb up the board, especially if I was playing late. Looking at a guy, big ball handler, 6'6", plus wingspan, really poised processor. Brad Underwood is a no-nonsense coach, and he showed a lot of trust in Keaton early, and he's impacted winning in a number of high-stakes environments. Tennessee, he was terrific against Nebraska, as well as the game before. And then some of the bye games, like you had mentioned, he was maybe a little bit more productive earlier in those. It's still a lot to learn, but I think anytime you have a real late bloomer who's still growing into his body, has positional size, feel for the game, really shoots the ball well, and then defensively is fundamentally sound and doesn't make much mistakes at 18 years old, to me, that's like the most intriguing thing in the world when you're trying to find upside and maybe project 4 years out, 3 years out. So I'll definitely be watching a lot of Illinois throughout the year, and he will be on our first board. We're dropping probably, when does this go out? Tomorrow?
Yeah, I'm putting it out first thing in the morning.
Board will be out in the next 48 hours, and he will be on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Keaton Wagler, man, he's gonna have an interesting choice to make because when nobody knows who you are, it's kind of easy to just, you know, do what you need to do. But now as teams are figuring out where he is on the scouting report, I want to see how he adjusts come Big Ten play. But like you mentioned, Brad Underwood has a ton of trust in him. Like that Nebraska game, like he was the one handling the ball. He was the one making all the decisions at the end of the game. And that's with Stojakovic on the court. There's so many. They got the European connection. I think Kylan Boswell is like the oldest or the youngest senior in the history of basketball. He's like a 21-year-old senior, and it was the freshman Keaton Wagler who's out there handling the ball. So he's definitely somebody who I'm thinking about. I want to put him on my 2026. He's kind of making it tough, especially because, again, he's the guy that, while he does need to grow into his frame, he does so many things well right now. And if you're 6'8" and you're a 38% three-point shooter and you rebound and you pass, you're usually a top 20 pick. It's just going to be a matter of, does he continue this throughout the Big Ten as it gets more physical and teams are starting. Everybody knows who he is now. He's not sneaking up on anyone. So, but Keaton Wagler, I don't know how he got away from Kansas, but that's the beauty of recruiting. Some people do a little bit more work. Sometimes you find somebody and you just pray that he stays under the radar. And also, with you being involved in the grassroots scouting, it really comes down to the kids and the family decision that you make. You got to go to the best school and not necessarily chase the money, because the money's going to come. A short-term payday isn't necessarily the best thing for you. Again, it's easy to say as we're here and we're adults, but like by going to Illinois and not going to whoever else was recruiting him, he set himself up because he trusted his game. And that's just something that as we as we look at these high school, because you're very involved at the grassroots level. I'm trying to do a better job at catching these guys when they're 15, 16 years old. And it's easy to get caught up in, should I go to the blue blood school versus do I go to the school that's going to give me the opportunity to have the ball in my hands. I look at Dylan Mingo, for example. He has a big choice to make. He is somebody, does he follow his brother's footsteps who's playing well at Penn State as a freshman? Do you do that same thing, or does he go to a North Carolina? I don't know if North Carolina is still involved. I just read prior to us going live, Darren Rippey's got a decision to make. I know he's got Duke, and then I know he's got North Carolina State. So it's what is going to be the best decision for him? And then, Tyron Stokes is going to be fine, I think, wherever. But the point guards, where are you going to go to that's going to give you the best opportunity to showcase yourself, also push yourself to be the best basketball player? So there's a lot of layers to choosing a school, a lot of layers in these decision makings. Go ahead. You want to say something?
Yeah, with the changes in college basketball where these players are legally making so much money, I had a conversation with a mid-major head coach last night at in the gym at a high school event, and he's talking about, they were going against a high major for a fringe top 100 kid, and they ultimately lost the recruitment battle. And, from afar, with no skin in the game, I was expressing to the coach, damn, I wanted to see him go to you guys. Because I think, and I have these conversations with agents, I'm sure you have the same conversation with people, it's there's this window now in college basketball. It's such an awesome business for these players where you can develop under great coaches. You are the priority. Every piece of your life is structured. So you want to make sure developmentally you maximize college. And I think we're going to start seeing, we actually have seen it with some of these fringer, top 150 types recruiting, by some high majors, and they end up choosing to go mid-major. And some mid-majors do have money. But I think, especially for point guards, there's nothing wrong with, spending a year at a little bit lower of a level. Maybe not the 5-star guys, but that's something I think we're going to start seeing more of because, the Keaton Wagler types, the, Dalton Connect goes mid-major, then goes to Tennessee. Chaz Lanier goes to North Florida. Those guys are making it. Mogbo, Rasheer Fleming. There are a lot of players that are making it to that next level without, like you said in the recruitment process, just going to the biggest school or the biggest NIL offer. So I think it's very interesting to see how players and their families and circles are approaching these decisions because it really is shaping the draft board. Talk about a guy like Keaton Wagler. How different would it be if he wasn't at Illinois? You know what I mean? It does help him that he did end up playing a lot as a freshman at Illinois, and he's playing, 4 or 5 top 25 games non-conference, and then he's going to play in the Big Ten, and we see him on the road in his first Big Ten road game, running the show. But yeah, kind of off a tangent there. I just think it's fascinating with kind of the high school scene because everything's changing so quickly, and there's just so much money on the table. And And there's a lot of pressure on these players to make informed decisions when, their brains aren't even developed till 24, 25.
Yeah. And, I mean, even just to piggyback that, like, we talked about Jeremiah Fears. Like, he chose to go to Oklahoma. Oklahoma, it's funny. I talked to his dad. Hopefully his dad didn't text me when this comes out. But he was like, they chose Oklahoma sight unseen. Like, he reclassed late and said he had a list of things that he wanted to do. And his dad was like, if you complete this list of things, then you can reclass. And then his dad put the filler out and was like, who needs a point guard right now? And the word got out to Oklahoma, and he was like, all right, let's go. And he could have, if he would have went to Illinois, he plays with Yaxel and Kylan Boswell, which means he's not at Illinois as a sophomore, and he's not in the NBA right now. And I think that choice, I'm just speculating, tinfoil hat, but like I think Jason Crow was like, you know what? I'm going to go to a football school, get the keys, and then I'm putting myself in position to be a one and done for the 2027 draft. So that's why I wonder, like, if you kids, and we're really on a tangent, but who cares? So our show, like, you take a haircut on the money for the right situation, you can make that money back.
1,000%.
Because you don't want to be in the portal as a sophomore. Again, you can overcome the portal. Like, shout out to Cameron Carr. You know what I'm saying? But there's less Cameron Carrs than there are more. I'm not going to say these kids' names because I think that, when these decision makers make these decisions, yes, look at the money, evaluate the money, but think about the money that if you're one of those guys, again, evaluate the money long term, but ultimately, like, you have to play. And it's just an interesting decision that these guys, we need to run this pod back and just talk about just that NIL grassroots. I want to get your opinion one day on regular high school versus the prep schools. I got to get you back on, but I'm gonna try to get this back on topic here. So Braden Burries, Arizona. We're gonna focus on the Arizona game. Braden Burries, Arizona won 96-75. Alabama plays somebody every week, and I love it because they're going to be ready to go come SEC time. But unfortunately, they ran into Arizona. Arizona's 9-0. But I wanted to talk about Braden Burries, who scored 28 points, had 7 rebounds, 2 assists, 11 of 19 shooting. He followed this game up against Alabama. The prior game, he had 16 against Auburn. He's got off to a really, really slow start. For a top 15 player coming out of high school, McDonald's All-American. What are your thoughts on Braden Burries? And do you think that he is trending in the right direction? Just give me your overall evaluation of Braden Burries and how he's played at Arizona. And what do you think he needs to do to continue to, give himself, to revive his draft stock, I should say.
Yeah, Braden Burries, kind of like a Burley combo, would you agree? Kind of a combo guard, can score, add value on or off the ball. I think in regards to like being a one and done, I think teams will be looking at his efficiency as a scorer and what he can provide as a passer and defender, because he does kind of lack the pop of a scorer at the NBA level, particularly one on ball. So that's where I'm looking too. I want to see how much he can, they're such a good team, how much he can do outside the scoring. Because we talked earlier with some of the point guards, like what jobs are available, like Anthony Edwards, like that's what we're putting the ball in his hands to score looks like at the NBA level, or like a Darren Peterson. That's what I'm curious to see, and he's going to have every opportunity to prove that. And again, it's also a thing where like now there's so much money in college, like nothing wrong with being a multi-year player.
Yeah. He is a little older for being a freshman. I believe he's already 20. He'll be 21. I think this time next year, but he is. I think he's adjusting. Like I said, he's been older than the competition, and now he's not anymore. And he struggled early on. It's good. It's good that these guys, or he's even getting an opportunity to like, not necessarily improve his drafts. Like that happens when you play well. And him having a really good game against a top 20 team in Alabama should be good for him as they enter Big 12 play. He's going to have opportunities. I believe they have Kansas on the schedule. I believe like there's Kansas, Houston, Baylor, BYU, you got to run through them at some point, whether it be in the regular season or the Big 12 tournament. So there are going to be opportunities for you to show that you are an NBA player. I just want to see him continue to make the jump shots. I thought he didn't shoot the ball well his last year on the AAU level. So like you said, okay, you're not Anthony Edwards. How do you add value? So you're going to have to defend. You're going to have to be a ball mover. You're going to have to make plays. And ultimately, he's got to finish better. I have him at 46% at the rim in the half court. And that's something that he's just going to have to improve upon. But I wanted to I don't have him in my top 30 right now, or at least my first round, just because he got off to such a slow start. And like when he was making shots, it was the bye games. And the way I evaluate, I can't give you too much props, or I can't put too much, emphasis on you beating up on the bye teams, and then when you're playing the top 100 teams or the Power 4 teams, it struggles. And again, the kids are going to have their ups and downs, but that's why I'm like, okay, it's the middle of December, and now he's just now starting to perform against some of these bigger schools. I'll evaluate him, and then we'll see where he is. I mean, not that I'm the end all be all, but it's just good to see that he's playing well now. Really quick, what are your thoughts on like Koa Peat and just really Arizona's prospects, like just as from the NBA level, college basketball fan? What are your thoughts?
I think Koa is, probably one of the more polarizing evals when you talk to scouts, just because the 3-point shooting isn't an element he's shown yet.
He passed up. And I've had this conversation with somebody on Twitter before. I'm sorry. Like I said, I don't want to see AJ DeBanta pass up open threes. And then somebody was like, oh, he's so good at the mid range. Like, I get it, but you don't want to pass up an open shot. And it's the same way for Koa Peat. And it's like, I'm not anti mid range jumper. Like that's how I feel like especially in college, when you're that guy, and at the NBA level for sure, when the ball is going to be in your hands, you take mid-range jumpers. But at the same time, I think Koa Peat ultimately is an Aaron Gordon type. Aaron Gordon, you can't eventually he doesn't pass up open threes anymore, and that's what I want to see like Koa Peat become. There's a play that just sticks out of my head where against Alabama, there's a trailing three. He's at the top of the key. He passes it up. He shoots a contested mid-range jumper, and you don't make it. And there's a difference between that mid-range jumper versus they chase you off the line and you get to a spot and you shoot it, and that's not the same shot as the one he does make, which is he catches the ball on the left block and he goes middle where he shows his excellent touch. But I want to see him eventually take those shots, because in the NBA, like that extra bit of spacing is what your star needs to get loose. So I interrupted you. I'm sorry, man. I had to get my Koa Peat take off.
Yeah, I think it's tricky because it's weighing, these guys are playing for their college team, not for NBA GMs, as much as we'd like them to. So, there's some shots. You can even look at a guy like Chris Sinak for Houston. He takes a lot of mid-range shots. It's clear that's a shot that, they watch film as a team.
Yeah.
In their offense, he's allowed to take that shot. And with Koa Peat, for Arizona, 3-point shooting has not been a part of his game. They like him taking the mid-range shots. So it's an interesting thing to value, kind of weighing what it is long-term, but kind of evaluating what he is. I mean, there isn't much he doesn't do inside the 3-point line. I think he has awesome instincts, amazing hands defensively. We've seen a lot of him, right? Talk about Keaton Wagler being someone unseen. Koa Peat has played it. I think he's a 4-time gold medalist.
Everybody knows him.
Yeah, he was a tremendous player in Adidas, Compton Magic, played at Perry, actually with Bruce Branch last year, who was a potential number 1 pick next year. But, awesome instincts. I think he has tremendous feel, really aggressive and physical, kills on the glass. We saw his impact in that game. Out with foul trouble. It was close the entire first half. I want to say Alabama might have been up at half or up most of the first half.
It was a close in the first half.
It was close. And when that's a really tough matchup for Alabama. They started throwing in different forwards with Bull Bowen, and then they put in, they subbed him out. But he's super just overwhelmingly physical, tough, competitive. And when you blend that with, some perimeter skill at his size, he's kind of built like a linebacker. It's a very interesting prospect. He's probably one of the more interesting ones for me to watch, just trying to, envision what it looks like at the next level, what a team would want to, whether they think he's the guy or whether, like you said, go into more of an ancillary role like an Aaron Gordon. I think he's very interesting, super talented, and he's just a winner.
Yeah, I think that he's an ancillary guy. I mentioned before on previous podcasts that I've had that for the Compton Magic, he was like the point forward. Like he handled the ball a ton. And, I understand completely that, we do what you need to do for the college coaches because you're ultimately you're trying to win. You're not playing for, like you mentioned, I'm not playing for my NBA draft stock. That's just a byproduct of me going out there and playing. I think that that's something that, or at least that's something I would like to see at the next level. Again, I understand you got to do what you got to do at Arizona, but like, because he is so strong, great hands, I would like to see him rebound and push the ball up the court because that unlocks what he used to do on the AAU level. Because like I said, like he legit handled the ball like a ton, and that's just something I would like to see from him. But just thinking about from that game, LeBaron Philon, who we talked about previous guys, or we were talking about Christian Anderson and Darius Acuff, like they have a decision to make. Am I a top 25 guy? Do I go back to school? Well, LeBaron Philon made that choice. I don't know if you were at the combine. I was at the combine, and it was like he was like a late scratch where we thought he was going to show up and play. I believe he tested physically. I want to say he did, and then he left. And look at the decision that he made. Ultimately, it was the right decision. I think he's a lottery pick. He may be somebody who, depending on how these evals go, do you take him as the first point guard off the board? I don't know, but he's improved as a shooter. He improved at the rim. He's very dynamic with the ball. He's a very crafty point guard. What are your thoughts on LeBaron Philon, who continues to pass? It feels like every test because, like I said, Alabama plays somebody every week.
I love him. I would have had him top 20 last year on my board, maybe even higher.
21. And
yeah, it's funny. It's funny. Like the night before he withdrew, I was like doing out my next board, and I'm like, could I put him like 15 or 6? That's where I was at. I think it's funny how this kind of works together. We're evaluating these point guards and some of these freshmen, like you said, that, are they, lottery? Are they mid first? Are they late first? Are they a multi-year guy? He showed so much adaptability and versatility last year, playing off of Mark Sears, playing off of other veteran ball handlers. Mm-hmm. And then now seeing him take the step and be the guy, be the catalyst. He's shooting a lot of pull-ups. He's shooting, mid-range. He's playing off bumps, floaters, offhand finishes. He's terrific in transition. Defensively, maybe it hasn't been overwhelmingly game to game, but he's shown in flashes the ability to be a real problem on the defensive end with his length, anticipation. And then I think, I described to someone on the phone the other day, he's like the modern NBA athlete, meaning, he has positional length for a point guard, combo, whatever. I don't even believe in the positions anymore. I feel like it's just archetypes. Yeah. But, plus wingspan, super fluid, like elite fluidity. And then he has that deceleration we see in some of the best players in the NBA, where you watch the playoffs and it gets so tight. And you have guys that are able to just abruptly decelerate, pass, floater, finish, draw contact. I mean, he's shown so much in, about 40, 45 games now at the college level. I'm with you. He'll be in the lottery of our first board. Honestly, knocking on that top 10 with the improvements he's shown as a shooter. That was really the thing. I interviewed him when he declared last year, and that obviously was the biggest thing he got in feedback from teams. It's like, we just want to know what you are as a shooter. You're a point guard in the NBA, guard in the NBA, you got to be able to shoot the basketball. And he's answered the bell through about 10 games. Obviously going to track that. But yeah, I'm with you. I think he's been fantastic, and he's shown a lot of adaptability, which for me, outside the top 5, top 10 guys, that's the biggest thing I want to see. Adaptability and defense. Because if you're a young guy and you can't defend and you're not adaptable, you're just not going to be on the floor. NBA coaches are coaching for their jobs. The front office could love the idea of you, but like, you're just not going to get on the court to develop. And I think Philon has been terrific. He's answered everything through 10 games. And he's just got this, people say aura, like swagger. Like, he has a real competitive streak to him. I watched them play at the Garden. Ruthless environment against St. John's. You're playing against one of the best defensive coaches ever in college basketball, Rick Pitino. Tough, physical team, fouls the hell out of guys. And he just took over. And you saw the eye contact, the engagement level from the coaches to him, to his teammates looking at him. He's the absolute backbone of that team. And I think, as like a basketball fan, I think Alabama's always like one of the top teams to watch. Just like they're on my college basketball league pass, I'd say. And that has not changed with him leading the group this year.
Yeah, they play a fun brand of basketball. It looks like the NBA. They're going to shoot a lot of threes. They're going to get up and down. But like you mentioned before, him being a co-ball handler and then becoming the ball handler ultimately sets him up for whatever role he's playing next year in the NBA, because he has seen them both. And he's somebody who I think where, again, we don't know how the ping pong balls may fall or who may select him, but he's going to understand that, okay, he's, I think, somebody who, if he's not the guy right away, he eventually can become the guy. I don't necessarily think to the extent of how Alabama is using him, at least not early on, but he has reps playing, off the ball, on the ball. I like him a lot. He reminds me a bit of like how Andrew Nembhard is just like him and Tyrese, they work together. And really like Tyrese is the point guard, but Tyrese can play off the ball too and knock down, catch and shoot shots, and that allows Andrew, he just goes out there and just plays basketball. So that's who like LeBaron Philon reminds me of. I have him 9th currently, and he's phenomenal. And like I said, there's an argument for him to be the first point guard selected. It's going to come down to who's selecting, but he came back to school and answered every single question that anyone had of him. And that's how it's supposed to be when you come back to school.
Definitely. And to your credit, when I interviewed him, he said that's the player he modeled his game after.
Really?
Andrew Nembhard, De'Aaron Fox, Derrick Rose, he studies guards like that, downhill guys that bring a certain intensity and grit level defensively, but also have that creativity. And again, we're zooming out and just looking at evaluating guards, the philosophy. If Andrew Nembhard's a hell of an example, looking at his ability to impact winning in so many different ways. And then we look at the trade market right now in the NBA. There's a lot of ball handlers. Teams are trying to move them, right? And they're tricky to move.
Ball handlers.
Yes, like world-class talents. And I'm not trying to, downplay anyone's talent level, but once you pay, a ball-dominant player in the NBA, and if they're not, versatile defensively or adaptable to play along other players, it can be a really tricky asset to move. And you can almost limit yourself in roster construction. And, we see the best teams in the NBA right now. That Thunder-Spurs game, the NBA Cup, I think we get a rematch on Christmas.
Yes.
Yeah, but you're watching those two teams, and you're looking at the guards they play.
Look like
A.J. Mitchell, multi-year guy, tremendous defensively, magnetic touch. So when you're in that offense, he can play off the ball, he can play on the ball, he can do a little bit of everything. And then you got a bunch of guys with long wingspans that defend. Like, you don't get out there on the court unless you can defend for OKC. And then look at the Spurs, their build. Stephon Castle, Mr. Do-It-All. Dylan Harper does it all. You know what I mean? So, I think those are top 5 picks. But, those are the guards that it's a no-brainer. Everyone else has a lot to prove, and that's why a guy like Philon, where, NBA scouts, you, me, we loved him as a freshman, and he still made the decision to go back to school and get better. So that's where I'm super patient with the guards. Everyone has their own philosophy, but I try to just be really patient and not commit to, he's a top 10 guy, or, he's one of the, because I think it's really difficult to, make that decision so early in the season. But yeah, Philon's been terrific, and I think the value proposition of taking a ball handler in the lottery, I think he has a lot of outcomes that are valuable defensively, as a connector, as a shot creator, as a guy that can play make in the open floor, pick and roll. So yeah, I'm with you. I have him in a similar range. And I think, we're picking apart the best first months of basketball. He's up there. Maybe yes. Caleb Wilson, Kingston Flemings, Keaton Wagler. But I think Philon's up there. He's been outstanding.
Yeah. I think he's a first team All-American for sure. And like I said, they play somebody every week, and he plays well. Even in the blowout loss, he was 24 and 10 rebounds from your point guard. So
another aspect that's important, rebounding, getting your hands dirty.
In the NBA, like you said, that Christmas game, in the NBA is such a copycat league, right? So that Christmas game between OKC and San Antonio is going to pretty much be the blueprint for basketball for probably the next 2 years, because it's going to be like De'Aaron Fox is your smallest guy, but De'Aaron Fox can guard ones, can guard twos, and you can't keep him out the paint. And then he competes. So like, and this is kind of why I guess to swing back to the Darius Acuff, Christian Anderson, it's like that. While those guys are really really good, that kind of point guard who is just like an okay athlete while you can shoot the ball, like it's harder for them in 2025 than it was 10 years ago versus even 20 years ago to like those guys would be no-brainer, you know what I'm saying, top whatever picks, but the game is just changing so much. So it'll be interesting to see like how teams evaluate them, but also how those guys just adjust. Like, I mean, you can be Peyton Pritchard if that's how you're built, that's how you play, that's the level of athleticism, and it may work out for you. But and then you look at a team like the Cleveland Cavaliers, who they're trying to figure out because, you know, Darius Garland, when he does play, is pretty good. He just hasn't been healthy. But at the same time, Donovan Mitchell, while he does have like a 9-inch wingspan, he's still 6'1". So they're trying to figure out how can we play both of these smaller guys together and then still play them next to our two centers who probably should, you know. But that's a whole other conversation. So to round out our college performances, while I have my guy Jacob Myers here, Yaxel Lindenberg. Yaxel is an amazing older prospect, but like he does everything. I think he leads Michigan in everything, maybe but assists, but he's probably second behind Elliot Cadeau. Against Maryland, where they're finally tested because Michigan's been slapping everybody around by 30 and 40 points. They had to come from behind to beat the Maryland Terrapins. Yaxel Lindenberg had a monster 29.8 rebound, 9 assists, 5 stocks game. Yaxel was another guy who was at the Combine last year. I told the story with my guy Leaf or whoever it was I was talking to. Yaxel was like a 50-50 guy on staying in the draft versus going to Michigan. I know a coach from Michigan, and I asked him prior to Yaxel making the decision. He was like, James, I do not know. We don't know. Ultimately, Yaxel did obviously go to Michigan, and he is playing well. I like what Michigan is doing. They normally trot out two bigs, Morris Johnson and Adai Mar. So they're playing Yaxel some as a combo 3, combo 4, just a big rotation. But he's shooting the ball extremely well, and he's somebody that's getting better every year despite being older. What are your thoughts on Yaxel Lindenberg?
Yeah, well, first off, I mean, Michigan is steamrolling competition early this season with a very unique roster build. They have more length than anybody. They got big dudes that can decision make, and they have a bunch of unselfish players that move the basketball. So they're a tricky scouting report. And when you break them down, they have depth 1 through 10. So you got to give credit to Dusty May and his staff for yet again building a tremendous roster. And then you talk about, you know, him withdrawing from the draft, someone that built a lot of buzz, being one of the probably one of the best players in college basketball last year at UAB. Just didn't get the spotlight of a Michigan because of the team he was playing for. But, you know, a do-it-all, 6'9", versatile forward that can process, play with physicality, bring grit defensively and rebound. You talked about Koa, you know, maybe want to see a little bit more transition playmaking. Mm-hmm. That's something Yaxel did to the highest degree last year at UAB, and he's shown it already for Michigan. But I was at this game and helped by a heroic shooting performance. Diggy Colt from Maryland was one of the best shooting performances I've seen. Just firing deep shots one after another. The crowd was going crazy. You know, you're playing the number 1 or 2 team in the country, and you got guys just keeping a minute with tough shot after tough shot. And actually, Yaxel eventually was just like, I'm going to guard him. It's very funny. I was curious during the game. I was like, is that what's going on right now? Like, and I looked back, and it seems to be pretty visible. And then they asked him about it in the post game, and he was like, yeah, just, you know, he was making all the shots. I wanted to stop him. He's the only one that can do anything.
He was picking him up full court at one point.
Yeah. And, you know, Diggy Colt's like a 6 foot, you know, 5'11" guard. But yeah, Yaxel's an interesting player. He's older, but, you know, the late bloomers, you know, sometimes developmentally you can consider him maybe a year or two younger just because, you know, he has such a unique upbringing. He wasn't a guy like the AJs and Darrens and Koas who were playing big-time AAU basketball, playing for a prep school, and he has a very unique upbringing. But I think good basketball players, right, like older guys that can play, process, defend, adaptable, and then, like you said, the shooting is a huge piece with him. That was probably my biggest gripe last year was the shooting, and then, you know, he's not the most fluid guy. So some of the playmaking, some of the field stuff was you question whether it translates just because like he was the guy so much at UAB, but now we're seeing at Michigan him playing alongside other players and showing that feel. So I think he's got a great chance to be a first-round pick, and he might be a National Player of the Year if Cam Boozer lets him have it.
Yeah, it's the thing with Yaxel, and it's not his fault, but like I believe he'll be 23 soon, and NBA teams, upside is still a thing, and a team's going to look at him and say, you know what, he might be more of a finished product than somebody who is, 19, 20. And that I understand that. He reminds me of not the same talent, but like it's hard to find flaws in their game. But like Meek Clifford last year at Colorado State, where you're like, you know what? He's going to be fine when he does get the opportunity to play. I know he's older, but he is like a complete basketball player in college. I think Meek is going to be good. That Sacramento situation is a little difficult for him. They got a lot of guys who play the same position. But I think once that deck is cleared, if it's ever cleared, I think he will be fine because he can do a little bit of everything. He can pass, rebound, improved as a shooter his last year at Colorado State. I think that's what Yaxel is going to become. A team drafting him understands that, you know what, maybe at like 16 through 20, we need somebody who we can plug in right away and help us win games. We're not trying to sit here and develop guys. If I'm a GM on the end of my contract, I'm likely probably going to take that guy to help me, get re-signed. Or if we're a team that we're a piece away and we feel like he can be a part of our front court of the future as we continue to contribute or continue to try to win, then he's definitely somebody there. But like Yaxel he's an interesting player. Like I said, you can tell that Michigan staff was like, hey, man, you're going to play a lot of three this year. You got to be able to knock down these 3-point shots. And he's doing so. So definitely want to show him some love. And like I said, it's good to see Michigan get challenged, man, because every time I look at the box score, man, they're beating teams by 30 and 40 points. And these aren't bye games. Like, they're beating everybody by 30 and 40 points. So, but it's good to see Yaxel. Before I let you go, you talked about, and I guess we got a little bit of time. Tell me about what you saw, and this is not 2026 draft, but tell me about what you saw at Bruce Branch, and what is your evaluation of Bruce Branch? Bruce Branch, for anyone who has never heard of him, he reclassified from high school graduation class 2027 to 2026, which means he's NBA draft eligible for 2027. On my top 25 list of guys that I have for the 2027, I had him number one in his class before he reclassified. For 2026 high school class, I still have him as a top 5 guy, but your thoughts on Bruce Branch?
Yeah, I mean, setting the scene, the next draft, meaning 2027, is seen widely as, people use the term weaker. Late bloomers always emerge. We don't know which guys will be one and done. So you don't really know, but there's not an AJ DeBansa. There's not a Darren Peterson. There's not a Cooper Flagg yet. So in his decision to reclass up, just turned 17, Bruce is kind of what they look like. He's, 6'7", 7'2" wingspan, huge, mitts for hands, like Kawhi hands, super smooth jump shot, crisp footwork in the mid-range, defends multiple positions, and has really taken a lot of strides over the past year and really came into his own. And, sitting down with him over the past year or so at different events, USAB, going from Perry, where he's with Peat, played Compton Magic with Cam Williams, who's another potential top 5 to 10 pick, headed to Duke. He is probably the more safer, just prototypical kind of guy when you're projecting that class, because there isn't really a clear cut, top 3, top 5. Like, it's tricky to pin it, 18 months away. But his development on the ball and as, a shot creator, stuff like that, will control his ultimate ceiling. But he's shown enough at this age, the defensive range, the prototypical size, length, athleticism, shooting touch, defensive versatility. Like, that's super valuable. That's what NBA teams scour the globe for. So he definitely has, an early lead in terms of just how he's viewed by NBA teams. He'll decide where he's going to college over the next couple months. He still has to make that decision. He's playing on prolific prep with Caleb Holt, another top 5 to 10 recruit.
He's gotten a lot better, man. Definitely as a playmaker, as a shooter. The ball still kind of spins funny, but it's going in. I do like Caleb Holt. He's somebody who at first I was like, and there's no shame in it because you ultimately want to collect NBA checks. But I was like, he's more of a Marcus Smart guy to me, where he was just physically, he was overpowering people with his competitive fire and his athleticism. But I think he's grown his skills some, really a lot over the past, say, year and a half, and he's grown as a playmaker and the shooter. Do you have time for one more segment? So we talked about earlier, and I just wanted to get your opinion as somebody who is heavily in the grassroots game. Thoughts on regular high school basketball versus the prep level? I'll start off first. I think the prep isn't for everybody. I also think that if I had a son who was on that path to Division I basketball, I probably wouldn't entertain the prep route, depending on how good he is, till probably at the earliest your junior year, which means your first 2 years, I would personally put you in high school basketball. Learn how to be the man, learn how to dominate, learn how you can't have a bad quarter. Again, some of this is dependent on where you live. So I live in Dallas. There's good basketball in Dallas. You know, you're going to run into some not good teams, but it's nothing to see other Division I high school basketball players. But the prep level offers just a totally different, like, if your roster has 10 guys, 6 of them are probably Division I guys at various levels. But what are your thoughts on the argument versus, staying in school versus the prep level? Again, we see guys like, I'm going to go this Saturday. I'm going to see Southeastern Prep, features like Beckham Black. I'm a big Beckham Black fan. I think
great point guard matchup that game, right? Yes. They're playing against Reese. Yeah.
Yes, Reese Austin. I believe Reese is at a regular school. Don't quote me on that. But it'll be interesting to see how like the regular school versus the prep school works, and like how Reese is still on that stage because he's legit that good. But your thoughts?
Yeah, Reese also plays Puma, so he's a little bit of he has to really play his game at the Puma level. One of the best players already last summer. But I think there's no right path. I think probably the aspect that doesn't get discussed quite enough is probably personality type. So some players are going to be a little bit more fulfilled playing with their like local, like exactly. If you're in Dallas, if you're in LA, if you're in Florida, DC, New York, there are enough good, usually private, sometimes public schools where players can be fulfilled playing with people they grew up playing, maybe they're AAU teammates, and they can still develop and have good coaching and be challenged. I think Keaton Wagler. Right? Like he could be a top 20 pick, and he stayed at his local school. I think the prep definitely does have a good sell. One, some of these teams already do NIL packages, whether it's through a shoe brand or, so you're getting taken care of. There are players that their families get taken care of. Their families are out there living with them in the city of the prep school. Prolific Prep has done a terrific job doing that. They just moved out to Fort Lauderdale, I want to say, outside Miami. But, yeah, I don't think there's one right answer, but it really just depends on how the kid is motivated, what the situation is like at home. Some kids, it's probably better off to be on their own. Some kids can't handle that. Some kids need maturation to be on their own before they go to college so they don't mess around as a freshman and maybe mess with their trajectory. So I think there's so many different variables at hand, but I do think there are really good local programs. I was at Hoop Fest this weekend at DC, and it was a great mix. I think it's one of the best events scholastically throughout the year because of the mix of you have like Paul VI with Jordan Smith, stayed there 4 years. WCC has historically been one of the best conferences in the country. He competes for.
Is a regular school or a prep?
It is a Catholic school. It's a Catholic school. They compete with teams like DeMatha, Gonzaga, and DC. These are teams that are historic high school programs, and they took Prolific Prep to double overtime. Prolific Prep's a bunch of all Division I's. PVI has some kids that it won't play at the Division I level. So everyone has a different path. I think it really depends. For me, I think the main factors are obviously the basketball of it. Are you getting challenged? Are you developing? Are you getting better at your current situation? Then extending out, how is the kid driven? Is he motivated? Does he need the routine and structure from his parents? Does he need to have discipline in the household? Does he have discipline in the household? And then third, what type of resources are you getting from going to a bigger program as a player? Do they have strength training, really good strength performance? Are they doing custom nutrition? Are you're doing PT stuff like that. And then the last part, because we said you have to have, a long-term mindset, as difficult as it is, because some people just don't, not everyone has the same resources financially. I think the last variable is the money piece, because at the end of the day, there are financial situations that can better your life as a high school player. But I don't think that should be prioritized at all. But long-winded answer, but it is an interesting thing to debate. And I think also you could break it down positionally, whether you're a point guard or big. The prep schools definitely pluck the big men more than other positions. That was something that I've definitely noticed at some of these events where the more traditional high schools are playing against, the IMGs, the prolific preps, EYBL Scholastic, etc. But yeah, everyone has their own path. Everyone has a different situation at home. But there's definitely been a huge transition, and a lot of the best players are playing on a prep team now.
Yeah. I will say this before we wrap it up to anyone like listening and watching. If you're in that situation, you have to do what's best for you. Like if you're not being recruited by a prep, you can still very much well fulfill your basketball dreams, no matter how high they are. We just talked about Oklahoma City. Like Casey Wallace went to the same high school for 4 years. Now he had another Division I guy on his team, and his brother went to the same high school too. But it's like your path is your path. I didn't get to see him last week. I missed it. But like Bryson Howard, he plays the 5 for a regular high school. And he went from nobody knew who he was to probably a top 5 player in his class going to Duke. And he's playing the 5 at 6'6", but he's going out there and he's learning how to compete. And I'm sure he had offers to go to whatever prep he decided, or whatever prep was recruiting him, but he decided to stay home. And then you look at like, what's my man's name? Marcus Spears Jr., right? He did his freshman year at the conventional high school, and he spent his second year, he sat behind a very good roster at Dynamic Prep. Now he's a junior. He's the man. He's probably number 1 in his class, number 2 in his class. But the moral of the story is you just have to do like what's best for you. If your friend is going to a prep, God bless him. That may not be the best thing for you. So, but it's a conversation that I've had with people before, and I get it. Like you're playing against the best of the best, but also I feel like there's nothing like being able to develop with the guys around you at first. You know what I'm saying? To like, if you can't shoot, I don't think you should go to a prep as a wing, because you're definitely not going to be able to have that same freedom to kind of like figure it out. And like you said, a lot of it is positional. If I'm 7 feet in high school, I'm not going to get any kind of challenges at the high school level. Versus if I'm a point guard in high school, I might need to go learn how to rebound. I got to learn how to control the offense. I got to learn how to. There's just so many different factors. So ultimately, you should do what's best for you. But I'm not going to, go on the tangent too much longer. I know Jacob was a very busy guy. I appreciate you for coming on my show again. Tell the people where they can find you at. If they're not already following you, listening to you, subscribe to whatever it is you do, tell them where they can find you at.
Yeah, if you search League Him, 2 words, on all the social media platforms, you can follow our work. We try our best to identify and track players from the high school level, the grassroots level, all the way to the NBA, and then also have a podcast where I interview executives, coaches, etc. So League Him on everything. I think the thing to plug would be finally putting out a board. Took a while. I'm curious
to
your
thought.
thought.
It's a lot of work to put a board out, man.
It is when you. I don't want to be too judgmental, but I think if you do it the right way, it takes a lot of work because there's a lot of games to watch. There's a lot of games each night, so you have to stay caught up. So if you get behind, it takes a while to catch up. And then the biggest thing is context of these prospects. To feel confident in your evaluation, you really need to understand the context and the journey of these players from A to B to C all the way to Z. So that takes a lot of work, working to get into, working to, understand all the different things. And then I also like going to games, and I do some high school stuff. So long-winded, but I'll have my first board out this week. We're going to put it on YouTube first this time. So League Him on YouTube. That'll be out. A lot of work has gone into that. I'm not saying it's all accurate, but it's where we stand right now. It's tricky to do it. Another part to the point guard thing, I have a hard time, being assertive with the placement of some of these guards early in the season because I'm still some of the more desired archetypes it's so early, you just don't know yet. Like some more guys are going to emerge in that. I'm curious your thoughts because you've done boards as well. For me, the trickiest part in this class to project in, second week of December, third week of December is like the late lottery to mid first, because there's a lot of players I'm not too comfortable saying he's a lottery pick or that type of deal, but like they've shown traits. They've shown like they could. There's some players, I'm not going to say names, where I could see them being top 25 picks and I could see them in the transfer portal. That's the life we live in right now in college basketball. But yeah, appreciate you having me on. Love your work. Keep killing it. And I'm always open to have these conversations. The prep versus high school thing really is very interesting. Because even if you do break it down, I had the same conversation with another coach this weekend. When you're trying to get a kid to come to you and they have a better offer, a better school, it's hard to pull historical data selling to the kid just because everything's so new and the table has completely changed. So like you said, Thunder, right? Kaysen played local team. SGA ended up at an academy. Aaron Wiggins stayed local, but he was at a great local program. Chet went academy. You know what I mean? So like you have,
and then you got Jalen Williams.
Exactly. But then at the same time,
with the portal, he just stayed and was drafted from Santa Clara. So it's like, go ahead now.
But even with that, those guys also didn't have the opportunities and options the kids right now have. So there's not enough data to pull. Yeah. It's tricky. Everyone's got to act in their best interest. The thing I hope is that I just hope that all players have the right guidance, because some people are misaligned, misled, and you never want to see that. I mean, I'm sure you're the same way. We spend all this time watching these basketball players from 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and we all I want every single prospect, every single player to reach their desired outcome. And a lot of times what gets in the way of that is bad counsel. So sometimes I'm always wishing for the best.
Basketball that stops you from or deters you from getting where you want to be. And, now that the money's always been around, but now that we can put the money in front of you, it makes decisions just that much tougher. And
before you go, you can commit in the fall. Let's say you sign in the fall. Not only did the coaching carousel go absolutely crazy, so all these coaches are trying to get better jobs. The assistant coach that might have led your recruitment, they might go to a different job, and then you're like, wow, I just signed a letter. But the money given out in these contracts is very different right now versus in the spring when the portal's open, because there's more options. So some players right now are signed to a financial amount. What happens if the head coach, changes, or they step down, or they take another job? So there's not a lot of structure right now. So I don't envy any person in these situations. Yes, there's a lot of opportunity, but there's also a lot of opportunity to make a mistake. So you got to try and get the most accurate information you can. I think the biggest characteristic I value right now with all this chaos going on is self-awareness in the players, because I think a player that's self-aware at a young age gets better because they take coaching. And sometimes you can see that from the school they pick. Another pod episode, but you look at a guy like Kingston Fleming's Chris Sinak picking Kelvin Sampson when they could have gone everywhere. Brandon Mullins picking Dan Hurley. Exactly.
Especially Chris Sinak.
Yeah, that says a lot.
Where before my brother retired from podcasting, he was a guy who I was like, you know what? Either Chris Sinak is going to be in the draft or he's going to be in the portal. And there was no way he was going to I don't think he's going to spend 2 years at Houston, just because of where he is as in his development and how Kelvin Sampson is. But it looks like he's going to be a one and done guy, and he's accepted coaching. And not to say he wasn't accepting coaching before, he was just, to me, he's just always been a raw guy. He was a late bloomer. He came on late in the scene. But Kelvin Sampson, every time I get on Twitter and I see Houston, they're raving about Kingston Flemings as a player. So that lets you know what type of time he is on. He's a professional. He's another guy, again, if we're talking about historical data, he spent 4 years at San Antonio Brennan. You know what I'm saying? In San Antonio, no disrespect to the San Antonians, my grandmother lives there, but in terms of basketball, it's Dallas and it's Houston, and he stayed in San Antonio. He became the man in San Antonio. He kicked dudes' butts up north all the time. So it's you can get noticed wherever you are. And I guess to end this podcast, at least on the grassroots level, if you keep the main thing, all the money, whatever else you may need, that will come. But if you're not locked in on basketball, then you lose money. It's just that simple. And then you lose money you find out who's really in your corner for basketball related things. But Jacob, man, I really appreciate your time. We got to do this again. That's Jacob Myers. I am James Barlowe. This is the NBA Draft Junkies podcast. We are out.